Welcome back to the Rich Life Diaries podcast. In today's episode, I'm going to be talking about why you're not rich. So let's get into it. Welcome to Rich Life Diaries, the podcast where we talk real strategies for creating abundance, building a business you love, and designing a life that actually feels good. If you're done playing small and ready to create your dream life, you're in the right place. So I'm sure you've noticed that some people are rich and some people aren't, and you probably wondered why. Why is that? And in my experience, I've seen this happen a lot, and I've often been puzzled by this. I've seen two people go out and do the same type of businesses. They put in the same amount of effort. They spend the same amount of money on marketing, yet one will be a huge success and the other one won't. And I've often looked at this and thought, why? Why is this? These people are no different. They're both putting in the same amount of effort. They're both putting in the same amount of money. Like, why does someone become successful and someone doesn't? In today's episode, I'm going to share all of this with you on what I've learned over the last 20 years of watching business owners create businesses, and some make it and some don't, and also some of my personal experiences as well on what I've seen as to why people become rich and other people don't. So one example I can think of, a personal story. Many years ago, I was in a multi-level marketing company, and one of my good friends joined the multi-level marketing company with me. And so we were both doing the same output. So we're both putting in the same amount of effort into this MLM company. If anything, my friend probably was doing more than what I was doing. But we were literally doing the same amount of work. And we're going to all the same events, we're doing the same amount of parties, we're kind of working together. And what I noticed is, I obviously became more successful than her. So I was making, I think in the first year I made 100K, maybe she did 30 or 40K. And I remember thinking back then, like, why is this? Why am I making this much money and she's making this much money, but we're putting in the same amount of effort? Like, this doesn't make any sense to me. So I guess over the years I've started to notice, what those things are. And what I've found is it's not always about, the effort. It is sometimes all about the mindset and the relationship that person has to money. And so that's what I'm going to talk about today, is your relationship with money and how that will have a huge impact on how much money you make or don't make in your life. So what I mean by that is what I started to notice with my friend. So we've come from different backgrounds. So she comes from a background where her family have a bit more of a scarcity sort of mentality. So she grew up in an environment where, even though her family aren't poor, they're middle class and they own properties and they've done well, their mindset is very negative when it comes to money. It's all that sort of scarcity sort of mentality of like, there's not enough to go around, and they sort of don't live a rich life, so to speak. They make their own, they have their own garden where they have their own, food and things like that. Like, they sort of live, how do I say this without sounding, like, they sort of live more of a poor life, I suppose. They don't go and spend money on anything. They keep all their money in the bank. They're not spenders. Not that I'm saying, to be rich in life, you have to spend a lot of money. But I do think there's a strong correlation there with that, because when I compare myself to her, these are the things that I've sort of noticed. And so when you, I guess, compare my upbringing and how the environment that I grew up in was very different to the environment that she grew up in. The environment I grew up in, my parents had no money when they got married. They got married very young. They had my brother when they were 17. My dad literally had holes in his pockets. Like, they had nothing. So it's not like my parents came from money. But I think the difference between my parents and her parents is my dad was, I guess, more of not a hustler, but, he became self-employed. He was determined to make money. My mum was probably very expensive because she liked the nice things in life. So that kind of elevated my dad to sort of try to, make enough money to fund her, I suppose. And I do think that is kind of a bit of a key as to why I've turned out the way I have, and maybe why I have a different mindset towards money because my dad never had any negative I never heard anything negative growing up in the house about rich people or about money, or, you hear a lot of people, they go, oh, rich people are assholes, and, all these negative sort of beliefs about money. And I feel like I came from an environment where my family were quite positive about money. We always lived in nice houses because my dad was a builder. So I guess for me, my beliefs about money were very different to my friend who grew up in sort of, not that she was poor, she's not poor, and her family are not poor, but they had that kind of poor mentality. And I think that she's kind of maybe subconsciously inherited that. Whereas for me, I've grown up in an environment where, my parents didn't have that. My mum was always spending probably above her means. She likes to buy nice things, and they were always going on nice holidays. We always lived in nice houses because my dad was a builder. So I do feel like some of what contributes to people becoming rich versus someone not becoming rich, some of it, not all of it, some of it has to do with your environment and how you grew up in and your relationship to money. So I guess once again, when I compare the two of us, that's the environment I grew up in. I also grew up with a father that was self-employed. He was always having a go. A lot of the things he did failed. Like, I'm not going to lie. Like, he's a smart guy, but he's not the sharpest tool in the shed. Sorry, Dad, love you. But yeah, like he tried, he was always trying. Even though he failed, he still went back out and had another crack at whatever. He'd build specky homes. Sometimes he'd make money out of them. Sometimes he wouldn't, but it wouldn't stop him. He'd still keep, going and pursuing, doing different projects and things like that to try to get ahead. And he did well, considering when you look at how they started out. They had literally no money when they started at 17, and now he's in his 70s and he's retired, and him and my mum live a very comfortable life. So I just sort of look at that and think, a lot of it does have to do with the environment that you grew up in. And if you inherited those sort of beliefs from your family, whatever those money beliefs were. So in my experience, I think the biggest things that make someone not rich is probably just a negative mindset towards money, the environment they grew up in, and inheriting their parents' belief. So the question you might be asking me was, okay, that's great. Well, how do I shift that? Well, there's lots of different things that you can do. So you can do things like hypnosis. You can read books on mindset. There's something that I actually noticed as well when I was in my 20s. Like, I was broke like everybody. I had no money. I had credit card debt. I was probably living above my means at the time. I was like everyone else. I had a basic job where I was earning a basic salary. And I remember having this friend of mine, her name was Brooke, and she was always winning. Like, we'd go to the casino or something, and she'd put money on and she would always win. And I've often thought about that too. I'm like, why is it that some people win all the time and I'll go through the same amount of money and I always lose? Like, I never win anything when I gamble. She's always winning. This kind of links back to the money mindset thing. I think it's a belief thing, right? So I think she always believed that she would win. And something I also noticed about Brooke when I remember analyzing her in my 20s, she was always very generous with money. So she was always giving it away. So I guess she had the opposite of a scarcity mentality. Maybe that's why she always won when she gambled money, because her mindset with money was like positive. It wasn't a scarcity mindset. It was like a abundance mindset. So, and that was something I noticed with her, is I always noticed she was very generous. And I wasn't very generous in my 20s. I was a bit of a tight ass because I had no money. So I didn't want to like give my money away when I didn't have any. But that was a shift that I personally made in my 20s. And that was a big shift in that I started noticing the more generous I was with my money, the more money flowed to me. So the more I gave out, the more money I got back. So I do think that's a real, another strong key into becoming a really good money manifester is be generous. Don't be stingy, because I do feel like, when it flows out, it'll flow back to you 10 times, hopefully. And I felt like that was certainly the case for me when I made that shift in my late 20s and I started becoming more generous with my money. Even though I didn't have the money to give away, I noticed a shift that it would always come back to me, if not double or more. So that's another sort of thing that I made a personal shift towards. And another personal thing that I've sort of learnt as well is, and this was something that was something I learnt when I watched The Secret, or read the book or watched the documentary, whatever, is just never worry about bills. I know it's easy to say that because we've all got bills, but when you get bills in the mail, unexpected bills in the mail, don't give it too much energy. So that's another thing that I've personally learned and I've done for years is when I get a bill, I pay it quickly to get rid of it. I'm like, the bill's there. I'm like, I don't want to sit on this. I don't want to stick it on my fridge. I don't want to think about this bill. This is money going out. I'm not going to give it any airtime. I'm going to pay the bill, get rid of it quickly so it's gone. And I do think that's another mindset thing with money, because if you have bills stuck all over your fridge or you're throwing bills in a pile, it's going to accumulate and it's going to stress you out. And then it just kind of creates that negative feedback loop about, oh, I've got lots of bills to pay. I've got no money to pay these bills, that negative sort of stuff is associated with bills when they come in. So that's another thing I've learned over the years is, when a big bill comes in, I try not to stress, give it any airtime. I'm like, it's all good, pay it. I don't give it any emotion and I get rid of it. And I think that's another thing that you could try to do and see if that helps sort of shift your mindset towards money as well. And another thing that I've noticed that will help sort of shift your mindset towards money is try to be around people that have money or try to spend your time with people that have a positive attitude towards money. Don't hang out with people that are negative towards money, because you become the 5 closest people you spend your time with. If you want to hang out with 5 losers, you're going to become the 6th loser. If you want to hang out with 5 millionaires, you might become the 6th millionaire. So choose your tribe wisely, because the people that are around you and are in your ear are pretty much programming your brain or contributing to programming your brain in a negative or a positive way. I know that's hard because we all have family members that, I know a lot of people, and maybe look at my friend who I was talking about before, maybe her family are a little bit, negative, a little bit sort of, as I said, they have that sort of more scarcity mentality. So I know it's not always easy to kind of, you don't want to just ditch all your family members and never hang out with them again, but maybe just try to balance it. If you do have to be around those kind of more negative mindset people, that's okay. Just make sure that you sort of counteract that with positive people. Spend the time, maybe limit your time with those people. Maybe, say I'm only going to spend a couple of hours a week with these people, and then try to go and spend double the amount of time with more positive people, or people that have what you want, people that are wealthy or have whatever it is that you're wanting, if it's more money or more love or more whatever. Make sure you're spending more time with those types of people, because that will have an impact on your mindset with money and anything else in your life for that matter. So to reiterate on everything I've spoken about today with money mindset, it is all mindset. So your relationship to money will have a direct impact on your bank account. So if you have a negative relationship with money, you're going to have a negative bank account. If you've got a positive relationship with money, you're going to have a positive bank account. So make sure you do lots of work on your mindset. Make sure you spend more time with people that have money or have a more positive mindset towards money. And if you don't have a positive mindset towards money, that's okay. You can do the work to help you change your mindset towards money, and hopefully that will help improve your bank account. So guys, that's my episode today discussing why you're not rich. Make sure you subscribe to our channel to keep up to date with what's going on, and I look forward to seeing you back here in a couple of weeks.